Welcome to Justice Counts, the podcast that goes beyond the law to what's important to you. Equal justice for all is a guidepost for our nation, but how do we achieve that? Here are your hosts, writer-commentator Bob Gaddy and novelist-attorney Mark M. Bello.
Hi, I'm Bob Gaddy. Thanks for joining us at Justice Counts. Today, legal thriller author and attorney Mark M. Bello is with Erika Twani, who has some strong feelings about the state of our schools and what needs to be done and can be done to fix them. Erika is author of Becoming Einstein's Teacher, Awakening the Genius in Your Students. She's co-founder and CEO of Learning One-to-One, where, along with experts, she explores ways to foster human achievement through relational learning. Before co-founding Learning One-to-One, Erika was Microsoft's Education Industry Director for Multi-Country Americas. She's advised government officials and education leaders around the world on the use of technology in education and has worked with public and private schools to guide the practical use of relational learning. She led Learning One-to-One into 5 countries in the first year alone, touching the lives of more than 100 students. Now here's your host, Mark Bello.
Erika Twani, welcome to Justice Counts. I'm going to refer to you as the mother of relational learning. You've been quoted as saying that it takes 10,000 hours to develop expertise in a particular subject. Using your own formula, I would venture to guess that you have way more than that on the topic of relational learning. Can you please tell our listeners what relational learning is and how you became its mother?
So first of all, Mark, it's an honor to be here with you and Bob in this conversation, and we hope to enlighten our listeners today with a little bit, talk about a little bit of education. So relational learning is a learning framework, is a way that children learn. Most likely our listeners have heard about personalized learning, competency-based learning, project-based learning, which are specific ways of learning that develops a closer relationship between teachers and students or focus on developing projects. While relational learning is a methodology that incorporates all of that, all of the above, all of the personalized learning, competency-based learning, project-based learning, and so on. And also focuses on the relationship between teachers and students and the relationship between the student and what is being learned. Now, as your point of saying, I am the mother of relational learning, yes, I do have more than 10,000 hours of practice in relational learning. Nevertheless, one of our co-founders of Learning One-to-One Foundation is the true expert on relational learning. I could say that I'm the expert on scaling relational learning. If you see the innovations around the world in education, they're very isolated. Oh, we know that KEEP education has great methodology, and that school in Finland has a great methodology. But how do we take this and bring it to the next level? We scale it, not only in the country level, but also in a worldwide level. That's my job.
Okay, well.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, it is. Now, you've written a book, Erika. It's called Becoming Einstein's Teacher, Awakening the Genius in Your Students. What the heck is an Einstein's teacher anyway?
The first chapter, I talk about the story of Einstein, how the relationship of Einstein in his education was terrible. He hated school, as many of children hate school today. They thought he thought it was boring, but Einstein had a privilege. He found his passion and he found his genius within when he was very little, at the age of 5. As a matter of fact, he was sick at the age of 5, in bed, and his father gave him a compass. And then he understood that the compass, the needle, will move to the north. So he called that invisible fields, and he fell in love with that. And he dedicated his studies and everything he had to learn about this invisible field. But most of us included, right, do not discover this passion until later in life, if we discover that passion. So Einstein's teacher, it was to inspire teachers to develop this intrinsic motivation and discover this dream that children have, and that passion that will make them realize their potential and make a difference in the world.
And we do this one-on-one. Should standards be established for each individual student? Does each student really have the capacity to achieve his own or her own dreams?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say yes. Now, there are standards and curriculum and content that are the basis. I call it the excuse for a student to get started. Because as students develop learning autonomy, they can find their own way. They can explore their own. If you see the story of Einstein, when he discovered his passion, he focused on math. He focused on understanding physics. He focused on the things that will help him study what he loved. So children eventually will learn that. And then we see that every day with the schools we work with.
You know, Erika, I have a T-shirt that I made. It says no such word as can't. And because I've always believed that if you set your mind to something, you can do it. And I'm just thinking that as you were talking, and with Mark's question, is impossible a dirty word in your opinion?
Remember the quote from Henry Ford he says, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly it. The word impossible, and it's funny because you mentioned that word. So at the end of the book, chapter 13, I read a story about a mathematician that was...
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Go
yeah,
ahead.
that's correct. His name was Danzig. He was a mathematician studying his doctorate in Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And he got to his class late, right? He was super late. And that happened in 1938. And he missed the class. And there were two problems written in the blackboard. And he wrote down the problems and said, oh my God, I'm so ashamed of being late to this professor specifically, because this professor is it's a professor that will helping him with his doctorate. And then he came up 2 weeks later with the problem solved. But what he didn't know is that those two problems were impossible to solve. And he solved both problems because he didn't know that it was impossible to solve. So that's a story that is very popular. You can check it out later. His name is Danzig. And that's the power of our mentality. I mean, if we believe that something is impossible, it will be. And if we believe that it is not, it won't. So it's that simple. It's that simple.
Clearly, we have been graduating here in America students who lack basic skills, math, reading, writing. But you have said that they also are failing to help kids develop critical thinking skills. How do we turn this around? If it isn't reading, writing, and math, what should it be?
So we're talking about two separate things. One is content, and the other one is competencies or skills, right? What we're supposed to focus today in the 21st century. And it's not that school didn't work before. I mean, why, Erika, do you want to change education if that worked for us, if that worked for our parents, if that worked for this country, it made the country that we are today, right? Why do you want to transform that? Well, it's because the same thing happened with the from industrial era to the knowledge area. I mean, it's not like, well, we like the industrial era, we're going to stay here. we decided to move on. But that transformation did not necessarily eliminate the industrial area. So I do not advocate for eliminating curriculum, eliminating the content that we have, or eliminating schools at all. What I advocate for is let's upgrade the way children are learning today. And the way we do that is by simply, it's very simple, ensuring that they learn how to learn. And if they learn how to learn and become self-directed learners, they will be able to learn anything. And at the end of the day, that's what schools are for, right? Prepare students for life. What we see usually is we get schools to the students that leave high school. And then we say, in the commencement speech, we say, follow your dreams, be who you want to be, and realize your potential. And we say that, but they look for themselves and say, what is it? What is my dream? What is my potential? I have no idea. And what do I want to do in my life? I have no idea. Just last week, I talked to a group of students, high school students, and I asked, what do you want to be? And 50% of them said they have some idea, and 50% said, I have no idea. Because they are not learning those specific skills in school. So what I advocate for is a development of skills, of learning how to learn, and that can prepare them for life.
So we shouldn't ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up?
It's too late for you, Bob.
I don't know. My ex-wife told me my ex-wife wanted to know when I was going to do that, but what the hell? That's why she's my ex.
There we go. She didn't see your potential, Bob.
Well, you know what? I was talking to a young kid the other day. I don't know, neighbor kid, I guess. And I said, "Well, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And he just looked at me and went, "I don't know, And I'm going like, "You don't know? You don't have an idea,
Yeah.
So, should we not ask a kid that? Should we just,
Yeah. And maybe in a school setting, they'll say, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be this, and I want to be that. But truly inside, they want to be a YouTuber, famous influencer,
right.
that will make a lot of money doing the things that they love to do. That's the true answer. But I like James Cassatt, who is a friend from Google, that says, instead of asking a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Ask a kid, what problem do they want to solve? Because at the end of the day, what we do solves problems in the world, right? We talk about building a better world for us to live. How do we build a better world? By solving problems. So what kind of problems do you want to solve?
That leads me right into my next question. I love that. I love that answer. How do you help a struggling kid unlock the leader inside him? And before you answer, I did some homework on you. I listened to a couple of YouTube videos and I went to your website and I did some research. And tell our listeners about the school in Colombia, a kid named Andres, the techniques he learned, and what he did with them, please. I love the story. You cried in the video. I'm not trying to make you cry, but I'd love to hear you tell the story.
I hope I don't cry, because that story transformed my life and touched me to such a way that
I'll try to behave. I'll try to behave.
I changed the course of my life completely because of that story. But anyhow, the way that we teach students, or the techniques that we help students, struggling kids, to get out of their struggle, right? So let's explain with the story. 15 years ago, more or less, I was working at Microsoft, and I was traveling the world, seeing what schools were doing the best, in terms of educating children, techniques that they were using, and what would happen if we add technology to that. And in one of the world, we worked with many, many schools around the world, but this particular school in a rural area of Colombia, the country, Colombia, we implemented something called the relational learning. And we added technology. It was super simple. It was very easy. So in my visit to that school, I see the kids with a big smile on their faces, so happy to share their how they're learning and their latest research and this and that, and explaining concepts. It was amazing to see, surreal to see such a thing in a rural school in a high poverty area where parents make like $2-3 a day to support those kids. And then I was in a high school classroom, and I saw this kid way in the back of the room. And I said, "Who is that kid?" "Oh, he's Andres. He's our president, the president of students." And I approached him because he was blind. And I said, "Andres, hi, I'm visiting." And he started to tell me his story. He lost his vision at the age of 13. He was 17 when I met him. He struggled because there was no special education school for him to go to. So he had to go to a quote unquote normal school. And his mother believed in him so much that he could be somebody. But at the end of the day, not sure if you know, but in poverty areas like that, the destiny of a person that is blind is to be begging in streets. And Andres was determined not to be. So when we came and started working with that school, and we provide a personalized learning experience for that child with the materials he could understand, with the respect he deserved, and untapping those skills and developing those skills, we found that this kid was a leader. He was a leader. He became the spokesperson of the school. He was speaking at the local radio in the community. He was interviewing big names of music in Colombia, and absolutely amazing to see how he flourished. And that's because of one thing. We discovered how to tap into his intrinsic motivation. It was his intrinsic motivation to look inside and say, what am I capable of? I believe I can do this. I'm going to try. I'm going to do this. He got full scholarship because of his grades. He graduated in communications. He started working for the Ministry of Communications in the country, at the country level. And he created this program that allows the blind and deaf to go to the movie theater and understand what's going on. So he benefited the population like him. He went to college again to do a master's, and he created he influenced a policy, like a national policy that allows, that requires every web developer to be inclusive. So imagine if this child did not have the opportunity to have a personalized education like we provided to him. He would be begging in the streets today. And imagine the potential that we will lose. Now, imagine the population of students we have in this country, in the United States, that are underserved. And imagine the power that we could unleash if we could just do this, exactly what we did for Andres, to every single child in this country. It would be unbelievable. Nobody could hold us back. Nobody. But most of all, these children will be absolutely happy, satisfied, and we wouldn't have the challenges that we have today, like mental health issues and this and that. And, these children solve their problems, their mental problems and emotional problems by themselves.
Are you in touch with him today? Are you in touch with
him? I am.
How's he doing? Okay.
I am. He's doing awesome. He's doing awesome. He's a little worried about his mother, who's getting older, and he loves his mother. but he tells me things about, his relationships with girls and and the work that he's doing, and it's amazing.
That's an amazing story.
A story like that is, first of all, a kid with limited vision has a grand vision like that. That's extremely cool to me. But the best part of it is the educational justice for a child like that to develop into the adult he is today. That's the kind of educational justice I'm talking about, where a kid like Andres can dream something that we would typically refer to as impossible, and the dream comes true, and it benefits all of us, not just a small segment of society, but all of us. And that's the important part of the story. Somebody who's unteachable suddenly becomes teachable. It's just so cool. That's why I wanted you to tell the story.
Well, I'm happy to hear that story. I need to interject something here. I just saw a story in the Washington Post yesterday about a young woman who is 13 years old. Her name is Alina Annalie Wicker. Alina just has been accepted at age 13 into the University of Alabama's Hersink School of Medicine for 2024. She graduated high school at age 12. She's a young African-American girl from Alabama. And I have no, I heard her on TV, and what a well-spoken, brilliant young woman she is. You would have thought she was 30 years old the way she talked. And I was just totally impressed. So anyway, I just throw that out for whatever it's worth.
No, that's amazing. And like her, she was lucky to have most likely a supporting family that would motivate her to become who she is today. So that impact has to do with two things, well, actually three. One is the supporting family. Two is a supporting teacher, even if it is one teacher, is a supporting teacher. And third is her belief in herself, the belief that she can be and she can do whatever she wants in her life. And if she wants to go to college at the age of 15, which is 2 years from now, she can. Why not? That comes back to your point, Bob, about the impossible.
Yeah. I would just say that in looking at this story, she credits her mother. She doesn't say anything about any other family member. She credits her mother.
They always credit the mother. What about the fathers?
I've worked so hard to reach my goals and live my dreams. Yeah. She said, giving credit to her mother, Daphne McWhorter, for all her support. Anyway, I just thought that was such a great story.
It is. It's a great story.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Back to our plan here. Now, in a traditional educational setting, I guess, a good student is one who is good attendance, listens to the teacher, does everything the teacher and parent says to do, and does well on tests. Now, what can we expect of this obedient student as an adult, and what would be a better gauge of this notion of good when evaluating tomorrow's adult?
That's a tough question. Bob, you're expert on asking tough questions.
Well, let me just tell you, Bello wrote that question.
I fed it to him.
I have to say, I would not have come up with that. But anyhow, so there it is. I put it out there for you.
So think about what Mark said in the beginning about the 10,000 hour of practice that we need to become an expert on anything, right? That is actually, Mark, the research of Dr. Anders Ericsson, who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago. Amazing researcher. He did a 20-year research about what really matters in terms of practicing and how one becomes expert. So he did this study. Now, this was popularized on the book of Malcolm Gladwell. If you read about his books, he insisted on this 10,000 hour thing. Now, students, I did the calculation. Students spend 16,800 hours, kindergarten through 12th grade in school. Practicing what? Exactly what you said there. Sitting down, waiting for the next instruction, and making sure that they do well in tests, and making sure that they follow the orders. And then after almost twice as much that practice needed to be an expert on anything, they leave school. And they're expert on what? Following orders, waiting for the next instruction. And we want what from them? Oh, have the initiative, go after your dreams, and figure it out what you want in life. It's totally controversial of what they're learning and practicing in school and what they're experts on. So we need to make sure that students are practicing skills that will allow them to become anything they want in life, and to allow them to realize whatever profession or whatever dreams they have in the future by developing those skills. And it starts with learning how to learn. A reporter a couple of years ago asked me, why you do not advocate for standardized tests and having a GPA so kids can get into college and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, because it's not the right measurement of what a child really is, or the effort that they're putting into this. So imagine that you are an editor-in-chief of a newspaper, and you want to you have two young candidates. One comes to you with a GPA 4, and the other comes to you with a portfolio of things that they have written throughout 12 years in school from the beginning in every single subject. Which one are you going to choose? The GPA 4 or the one that presents your portfolio?
It depends on whether I like their portfolio.
That's right.
I'll tell you, since I had a GPA of less than 3, I'd hire the kid that had all the writing.
Exactly, but at least you know what kind of writing that candidate will have if you hire that candidate, right?
Exactly.
At least you know.
It's such an interesting point. Although what I find even more interesting is this notion of doing everything you're told rather than rising above that and becoming someone who tells you. I just find it fascinating that the good student is somebody who listens to everything the adult says rather than challenging it. Seems to me we ought to challenge it a little more. That's maybe that's the lawyer in me, but that's just it's an interesting concept.
It's so funny
Go ahead.
It's so funny that when I worked with to big corporations, one of the challenges that we had with new employees was planning their day, execution, right? And this, for me, is one of the most important skills that children must develop while they are in school. But they get to school in kindergarten, everything's already planned for them. The grades they have to go through, the books they have to read, the subjects they have to learn, the tests they have to take, everything is planned. They never had the opportunity to decide anything or to plan anything themselves. So when they get to the workplace, they repeat exactly what they learned. And it's so challenging for us to break that cycle and to break that habit and make sure that they know how to plan and execute whatever they have in their plate. So you're right, Mark. That's something, one of the things that we must change.
And that's true both of students and teachers. They both expect that kind of behavior in school. I want to turn our attention to crime and bad conduct. Two of my books focus on a topic that you like to speak about, bullying. I wrote a book called Betrayal High, which discusses bullying in the high school shooting context. And I wrote children's book called Happy Jack, Sad Jack, which discusses bullying as early as kindergarten. From my point of view, we could solve bullying issues by improving a student's self-esteem, it seems to me. But how do we do that? And how might your techniques be used to raise safer, more responsible kids, prevent bullying, criminality, or even mass shooting events? Talk to me about your techniques and those situations.
I agree 110% with you that the way to solve bullying is to increase self-esteem of each student. And the way the technique or the methodology or the framework works to develop that is first by making sure that we respect every child. It's not like you don't know math. It's like you are in this level of math. That's the first one, right? The second one is as children practice for planning, for example, goal setting, as children practice researching and developing projects themselves, at the end of the 6-step learning framework it's something called self-assessment. What we call, technically, we call it a metacognition process, which is, let me look into what I've done. Let me see if I did well, if I have to improve, or with the coaching of the teacher. And then as students gain confidence in themselves, they increase self-esteem significantly. The schools we work with, we reach out to over 100,000 students a year through their teachers, right? Because we train teachers, we work with teachers. And in those schools, there's no bullying. The reason there's no bullying is because they increase self-esteem. So it's an amazing thing to see that just because they're learning a technique to learn, they can increase self-esteem. And I do believe that the mass school shootings that we see and the problems that we see today, the many mental health issues that we have today, they are caused because of the bullying. Every single child that were involved as a shooter, involved in those school shootings, they were bullied. And every single child that is in trouble in school is because they were bullied. So how can we eliminate bullying? It's increasing self-esteem of students.
Okay. Now you've spread the concept of relational learning worldwide. How's it going, Erika? You feel like you're making a difference? How many students would you say, and how many countries have been affected and impacted by your work?
Oh, it has been 11 years since we found Learning One-to-One Foundation, which is an organization based out of the U.S., and we work extensively with many, many countries around the world. Today, this year, for instance, we've been working with over 10 countries approximately. We train about 5,000 teachers a year, and we're structuring to serve even more teachers to make sure that we spread the word. And as you saw, I wrote a book about it, so it's reaching out to countries that we never imagined before. And that's exactly what we want. We want to make sure that every child has the opportunity to have the simple thing, to have access to the simple learning framework that can make a huge difference in their lives, as we did in the life of Andres.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, we're still dealing with this pandemic. You've said that our solutions to this healthcare crisis have punished, or at the very least, created an injustice for low-income students. How is that?
Well, if we saw the very first answer for the pandemic in terms of school districts was to use online learning, right?
Yeah, it was.
But only 45% of students in this country have access to computers, and the internet access is not necessarily the best. for most of the students, because there are a lot of students that are in rural areas.
Sure.
So that's a huge injustice to believe that we will solve any pandemic or any delay on learning or any learning loss with technology. And the reason I say that is because of the technology access. Now, if you ask Erika, so then what they did was wrong. Absolutely not. I do believe that teachers and school districts are committed to serve students, and they found a reasonable solution at that time to solve an issue that was a surprise for everybody, right? However, to believe that in order for us to learn, for students to learn, and for us to solve learning loss, we need technology, is to erase 55% of the students that do not have access to technology, is to ignore them. What if we start from something that every child already has, which is a brain? So if we develop skills of learning how to learn, then those kids will learn anything. They will find a way, regardless of access to technology or not. And I tell many stories in my book, many stories like that. But one particular one is very interesting because that impacted me a lot. So my husband works with C-level executives, right? Helping them to develop negotiation skills. And one executive of a huge global company answered an email to him when he sent an email saying, hey, I need you guys to answer those specific questions. And the questions were in a PDF file that he sent. And then this executive answered back and said, I can't do that because it's in PDF. The PDF is not editable. Editable.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know any PDFs that are edible either.
Editable.
Let's get the salt and pepper.
You could, yeah. So he never think of creating a Word document or answering the email. He never thought about that. And then another story, another perspective. We were running a couple of webinars with kids, with students. And then we had different students from different ages. And one 11-year-old got an email from a person from my team saying, I need you to sign this, your mother or father to sign this document so you can participate in our podcast. And then she saw that email in an internet cafe. She did not have a printer, or she had to pay to print a paper. So what she did, she got her notebook and wrote the entire thing, ran home, had her mother sign the document, asked a cousin to take a picture, and send it back to us. That's the right views. That's the critical thinking. That's the creativity that we want to develop with students so they can get to the older age, like the C-level guy, and have a solution for the problems that they face every day.
Right.
Erika, I agree with you, but I don't think that rectifies the injustice. If let's say so-called wealthy students have access to all these tools and less wealthy students don't, there's still an injustice there. How do we rectify this?
Absolutely.
It just seems to me unfair.
It is unfair. But if we get stuck on the unfairness mark and we don't find a solution to solve it today, what we are doing is we're delaying the opportunity for those students to have an opportunity in life. So what I advocate for is let's make sure that we use their brain, because when technology comes, and there are a lot of organizations like nonprofits and organizations like Microsoft, Google, and Intel, they work to bring computers to schools to make it more affordable. Telco companies like Verizon, like AT&T, like T-Mobile, they have programs to benefit students. So while districts are figuring that out, let's make sure that we're developing those key skills that will allow students to use technology correctly. What I believe is that we must understand what we can do and what we cannot do. Like you and I cannot solve the problem of a famine problem in Africa, right? Like you and I do not have all the resources in the world to put in the schools today to bring technology and internet access to all students, to the remaining 55% of students that are missing or have lack of access to technology today. What can we do? And what can we do is we can have these discussions and bring awareness to our audience. We can have the use of the brain of those kids and prepare them with the skills necessary for their future, so on and so forth. That is what we can do. And of course, continue to advocate with those organizations to make sure that they bring access to technology to those schools.
You know, we've got kids like the Buffalo shooter who was encouraged to do what he did by online hate groups. How do parents and kids prevent indoctrination or brainwashing that these kids are getting from these kinds of sources?
That's the other side of the internet.
That's right.
The bad
Yes.
part of the internet.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Bob, I do believe that parents have the responsibility to know what's going on with their kids. And today, telco companies provide tools for us to do that. I mean, you cannot just say that, oh, I can't monitor everything that my child is doing. That's not true. Those monitoring tools will provide you with the right information and the right red flags in the moment that children are accessing or having conversations with unwanted or bad influences for them. So parents do have that responsibility. But also at the same time, I do believe that schools also have the responsibility to create this awareness for parents and telco companies as well. I mean, if they have the tool, why not help parents to understand that they need to invest on this, on giving this specific attention to their use of technology. Now, what I do advocate, Bob, is that learning is everything. The only way for us to change whatever those children have learned is by making sure that they're learning something new. I love the concept that the research that says that we have 70,000 thoughts per day. 70,000. And 90% of these thoughts are about the past, are about the things that we've done in the past. And then if we don't take care of it, all we do is to repeat it over and over and over again. So if a child learns at the age of 6 that, is brainwashed at the age of 6 that, certain people are bad and this bullying kids are bad and so on and so forth, that thought will be building up, will keep building up until later age. And what happens? We see the 17, the 18-year-olds exposed to firearms, and then when we least expect, they're shooting the kids in school. So if we can, the only way to reverse that is to make sure that children are learning something new every day and they're interested on those things that they're learning.
And where do you stand on banning books and discussions about race or sexuality in school? The so-called "Don't Say Gay" laws or the critical race legislation that keeps running around in these red states. What should educators do instead?
Yeah, it's a huge debate right now in our country, and each side, the conservatives have their reasonings behind it, and the progressives have the reasonings behind what they do not agree with all of that. And
who's right?
Exactly, who's right? And then you can say, however is your political affiliation or political tendency, you can decide from one side or the other. But at the end of the day, I mean, the reason wouldn't be more important for us to start to develop critical thinking skills so children can decide for themselves. Because even if we can prohibit every single book in the world regarding race, regarding sexuality, regarding gender preferences, whatever. But we live in the knowledge era. We have internet access. Children can have access to anything today. And even if they get older, if you don't give them access right now, they will have access later. And God knows what kind of access they will have or what kind of interpretation they will give if they don't have the right guidance or the right critical thinking on that specific subject. If we have that in schools, that's great because teachers can guide them throughout the content and can guide them in this education. If they don't have that access to that content in school, let's make sure that they have critical thinking skills well developed and they're prepared to face and decide for themselves what to do and what to believe and how to move forward when they face those issues.
By way of example, the state of Colorado basically applied that reasoning to their handling of the abortion crisis. You want to elaborate on that for me, please?
Absolutely. This is a great example, Mark, because when we are talking about Roe v. Wade, having this one side or the other and respect my body and my decision and all of that, those things, and the religion aspect of it's very difficult for us to change the belief that each person has. But Colorado, I love the state, what the state did. They said, okay, how do we solve this problem? How do we make sure that we diminish the number of unwanted pregnancies that we're having in our state? So they simply started distributing condoms to the critical age in which girls were getting pregnant. So they took the data and they did something with that data and was to distribute condoms. And in a 4-year period, they diminished unwanted pregnancies by 40%, which is a huge saving in terms of, now we have to do abortions. Now we have to face the people that are against it and this and that. That's great. That's what we need. That's people with initiative, that double click in an issue and find out where the problem really lies and solve that specific problem, not having to put a Band-Aid on the solution at the end when things already happen.
Mark and Erika, we've pretty much run out of time. I know that there are a lot of other areas that we hope to get into, and I'm hoping maybe sometime we can have you back to continue this discussion. Erika, are you available to do that?
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Bob.
Okay.
You know that.
Thank you so much.
I'm beginning to worry about the two of you. I don't know.
All right. Erika, thanks for joining us today for our podcast. Mark, Bello, and I are grateful. And thanks, everyone, for listening. Meanwhile, if you haven't done so already, please check out Mark Bello's Rip from the Headlines legal thrillers, all available online at Amazon and other major online booksellers. He's quite the hero in attorney Zachary Blake, who fights for justice on all fronts. His books are Betrayal of Faith, Betrayal of Justice, Betrayal in Blue, Betrayal in Black, Betrayal High, Supreme Betrayal, Betrayal at the Border, and his latest, You Have the Right to Remain Silent. For more information, just check markandbello.com. Until next time, this is Bob Gaddy for Mark Bello, signing off from Justice Counts.